My stomach twisted into a knot as I stared at the number on the scale. 84 pounds. Mrs. Newman, our school nurse, turned white as she read the digital display. Behind her, the health poster on the wall seemed to mock me with its colorful food pyramid, a world away from my reality of locked kitchens and withheld meals. The room began to tilt, colors bleeding together as my malnourished body finally surrendered to gravity. "I need to call an ambulance," Mrs. Newman said, already reaching for the phone. "Please don't," I whispered, my voice as thin as my wasting frame. "My parents will be angry." But as darkness crowded the edges of my vision, I realized something was breaking loose inside me. Not just my weakening body, but the wall of silence I'd built around my family's discipline. For the first time, I wanted someone to know the truth. I wasn't sick. I was being starved. My name is Olivia. I'm 17, and this is the story of how I turned my parents' weapon of starvation into the evidence that would destroy them. 4 days earlier, I had stood outside our kitchen, listening to my family prepare dinner without me. The familiar click of the lock had signaled my exclusion, my punishment for telling my teacher I was too dizzy to complete my homework. Mrs. Patterson had asked if I'd eaten breakfast, and I'd accidentally admitted I hadn't had a proper meal in 2 days. "No dinner for Olivia," my mother called out, loud enough to ensure I heard through the frosted glass door. "Maybe tomorrow you'll remember to tell the truth." The aroma of roasted chicken made my hollow stomach clench painfully. I pressed my palm against it, trying to quiet the growling that had become my constant companion. This was day 3 without a real meal. I'd only managed to sneak a granola bar from my friend's lunch the day before. Through the door's frosted glass, I could see the silhouettes of my parents and younger sister, Brianna, moving around our kitchen. "Brianna's eating with us tonight," my father announced. "Since Olivia can't seem to appreciate family dinner, she doesn't get to participate." Brianna, 13, said something I couldn't hear, then Dad's voice louder. "She'll eat when she learns respect. A little hunger builds character." I retreated to my bedroom, lightheaded from standing too long. At 17, I weighed 89 pounds, down from 120 just 6 months ago when this discipline had started. It began when I questioned why Brianna got new clothes while I wore threadbare uniforms from 2 years ago. "Ungrateful children don't deserve new things," Mother had said. "You'll get new clothes when you learn gratitude." The hunger punishments began small. No dessert, smaller portions, no seconds. But as I continued to show any sign of independence, asking questions they didn't like or expressing opinions they disagreed with, entire meals were withheld, sometimes for days. "You can have water," Mother had explained during the first long punishment, "and once you apologize sincerely for your behavior, we'll discuss food." The problem was, the definition of sincere kept changing. I'd apologize for whatever transgression they'd identified, but it was never enough. "You're just saying what you think we want to hear," Dad would say. "When you truly understand your wrongdoing, we'll see." What began as childhood discipline had evolved into something else entirely, something I was only beginning to recognize as abuse. But the conditioning was strong. Family business stayed in the family. That night, I lay in bed listening to my stomach growl while my family watched TV, laughing at some sitcom. A normal family evening, except one member was slowly wasting away in her room. I tried keeping food in my room, but Mother did regular searches. "Hoarding food is a sign of an eating disorder," she'd said when she found my hidden crackers. "We're doing this for your own good, Olivia, to break these unhealthy patterns." The irony wasn't lost on me. They were creating an eating disorder while claiming to prevent one. At school the next day, I moved carefully, conserving energy. During biology class, Mr. Rodriguez was explaining how the body breaks down muscle tissue when it doesn't have enough fuel. "The human body is remarkably adaptable," he said. "In cases of severe caloric restriction, it will cannibalize its own tissue to survive. First fat stores, then muscle, eventually even organ tissue." I wondered which stage I was in as the room began to spin. The darkness came suddenly. One moment I was taking notes, the next I was falling. In the hospital, everything moved quickly. 4 lines were inserted, blood was drawn, monitors were attached. Dr. Patel examined me while a nurse documented everything. "How long have you been restricting food?" and she asked gently. "I'm not," I said automatically. "I mean, I don't have an eating disorder. My parents—" I stopped, the conditioning still strong. "Your parents what, Olivia?" Something in her voice, professional but compassionate, broke through my walls. "They lock the kitchen," I whispered. "When I'm bad, when I lie or disrespect them. No dinner for liars, that's the rule." Dr. Patel's expression didn't change, but I saw her exchange glances with the nurse. "How often does this happen?" "More now. This time it's been 4 days, I think, maybe 5. I lose track." "And your parents are the ones withholding food?" I nodded, tears streaming down my face. "Dad says I need discipline. Mom says I'll eat when I learn respect, but I never learn it right. It's never enough." Dr. Patel squeezed my hand. "Olivia, what's happening to you is not discipline. It's abuse. I need to make some calls." The next hours were a blur of tests and questions. A social worker arrived, then police officers. My parents were called to the hospital. I could hear my mother's voice in the hallway, shrill with indignation. "This is ridiculous. Our daughter has an eating disorder. We've been trying to help her." But the blood tests told a different story. Severe malnutrition, vitamin deficiencies, muscle wasting, organs beginning to show stress. The clinical nutritionist who reviewed my case was blunt in her assessment. "This isn't anorexia or voluntary restriction," she told the team. "The pattern of deprivation, the specific deficiencies, this is consistent with involuntary starvation. In my professional opinion, continuing this would have resulted in organ failure within weeks. This is severe neglect that could have been fatal." When my parents were finally allowed in my room, they came with their lawyer. My mother's perfect composure was cracking. My father's authority was challenged by the medical professionals who wouldn't defer to his demands. "She's a troubled teen," my mother insisted. "She lies constantly, hoards food. We were trying to break these patterns." Dr. Patel's voice was ice. "Your daughter weighs 84 pounds. Her body is catabolizing its own muscle tissue. Her heart rhythm is irregular from electrolyte imbalance. This is what we see in concentration camp survivors, not troubled teens." "You don't understand," my father started. "Olivia is manipulative. She's probably been making herself sick for attention." That's when Brianna spoke up. My little sister, who'd been brought by a social worker, looked smaller than her 13 years. "They lock the kitchen," she said quietly. "I hear Olivia crying from hunger at night. Mom makes me eat in front of her sometimes. Says it's to teach her consequences." The room fell silent. My parents turned to stare at Brianna in betrayal. "I didn't want Olivia to die," Brianna continued, tears rolling down her cheeks. "I tried to sneak her food, but Mom caught me and said I'd be next if I didn't stop enabling her." The lawyer whispered urgently to my parents. The police officers stepped forward. The social worker moved Brianna closer to me, away from our parents. "Mr. and Mrs. Thompson," the lead officer said, "we're placing you under arrest for child endangerment and abuse." My mother's mask finally shattered completely. "She deserved it," she screamed as they handcuffed her. "Ungrateful, lying little." "We gave her everything," my father protested. "Except food," I whispered, but I don't think anyone heard me. As I lay in my hospital bed that night, watching nutrients flow into my body through the IV, something shifted inside me. The doctors had saved my life, but they'd done something else too. They'd validated my reality. For months, my parents had convinced me that I was the problem, that my hunger was a character flaw rather than a basic human need. That night, I made a decision. I would not just survive. I would make sure my parents faced the full consequences of what they'd done. The next morning, I asked to speak with the detectives. When they arrived, I was sitting up in bed, a notebook in my lap. "I want to help with your case," I said, my voice stronger than it had been in months. "I've been keeping a secret diary of the food restrictions. It's hidden in my room, in a hollow space behind my dresser." The female detective looked surprised. "That could be extremely helpful, Olivia. We'll send someone to retrieve it right away." There's more. I continued. My mother keeps a punishment chart in her desk. It documents days of dietary restriction for various infractions. And there's a food diary where she tracks exactly what I'm allowed to eat each day. The male detective was already taking notes. Do you know where exactly we can find these items? I smiled slightly. Top right drawer of her desk. The password to her computer is Perfect Mother 2025. She has spreadsheets tracking my weight loss. She called it my progress. Over the next 2 weeks, I worked with the prosecution team. I didn't just share what had happened. I provided evidence, dates, patterns. I remembered overhearing my mother on the phone with friends, discussing her tough love approach to my behavioral issues. I gave them names, dates, potential witnesses. You're being incredibly brave, the prosecutor told me. Most victims your age wouldn't be able to be this methodical. What she didn't understand was that this wasn't just about justice. It was about reclaiming my narrative. Every bit of evidence I provided was a meal I was taking back, every testimony a door I was unlocking. During this time, my Aunt Sarah, my father's sister who lived across the state, came to see me in the hospital. She'd always been kept at a distance by my parents, and now I understood why. When she saw my condition, she immediately petitioned for temporary custody of both Brianna and me. I had no idea, she kept saying, wiping tears. I always thought something felt off when I visited, but they limited our contact so carefully. When the preliminary hearing came a month after my collapse, I asked to testify in person rather than via video link. I wanted to look my parents in the eye as I spoke my truth. Are you sure? My Aunt Sarah asked. She'd taken temporary custody of Brianna and me. You don't have to face them. I do, I said. They made me invisible. I want them to see me now. In the courtroom, I walked to the witness stand without looking at my parents, but I could feel their presence, their silent demands for my compliance, for my silence. For the first time, those demands held no power over me. As I was sworn in, I finally turned to look at them. My mother's face was a mask of indignation. My father wouldn't meet my eyes. They seemed smaller somehow, diminished without their absolute control over me. For 2 hours, I testified about years of escalating discipline. I described the locked kitchen, the hunger that became so familiar it was almost a companion, the dizziness that became my new normal. I detailed how they would make Brianna eat in front of me, how they convinced the school I had an eating disorder when teachers became concerned. Did you ever tell anyone what was happening? The prosecutor asked. They made sure I couldn't, I replied. When the school called home once, they took away my phone for a month. They told me if I said anything, Brianna would receive the same discipline. And they convinced me this was normal, that all parents discipline their children this way, that I was just especially difficult to raise. When it was time for cross-examination, my parents' lawyer tried to paint me as troubled, manipulative, prone to exaggeration. But I had something he didn't expect: evidence, medical reports showing systematic starvation, the food diary in my mother's handwriting detailing my infractions and corresponding punishments, photos comparing me at the beginning of the year to the day I collapsed. Your Honor, I said during a particularly aggressive line of questioning, I'd like to show the court something. With the judge's permission, I stood and lifted my hospital gown just enough to show my protruding ribs. The skin stretched tight over my hip bones. This is what discipline looks like, I said quietly. This is what my parents did to teach me respect. The courtroom was silent. Even my parents' lawyer seemed at a loss. The judge cleared his throat. I think we've heard enough for today. 3 months later, after a 2-week trial that ended with guilty verdicts on all counts, I sat in the courtroom for sentencing. My weight had increased to 105 pounds. I could walk without getting dizzy now. Brianna and I were living permanently with Aunt Sarah, who never locked any doors in her house and kept the pantry constantly stocked. My parents were convicted on multiple counts of child abuse and endangerment. Before announcing their sentences, the judge allowed them to make statements. My father spoke about disappointment and ingratitude. My mother cried about how hard it was to raise a difficult child. Neither apologized. Neither acknowledged that they'd nearly killed me. When they finished, the judge asked if I wanted to make a victim impact statement. I'd prepared for this moment, rehearsed my words carefully. But as I stood to address the court, I set aside my prepared speech. For years, you controlled what entered my body, I said, looking directly at my parents for the first time since the trial began. You used food as a weapon, hunger as a punishment. You nearly killed me in the name of discipline, but you failed. I took a deep breath. I'm not here to tell you how you hurt me. The medical reports do that better than I ever could. I'm here to tell you that you no longer have any power over me. My body is mine. My hunger is mine. My recovery is mine. I turned to the judge. I don't need them to apologize. I don't need them to understand. I just need them to have no power over anyone else ever again. My mother received 15 years. My father, 12. The difference? The food diary in my mother's handwriting showing she was the primary architect of the starvation plan. As they were led away, my mother turned to look at me one last time. I held her gaze steadily, a granola bar in my hand. I took a deliberate bite as she disappeared through the courtroom door. I'm 19 now, living with Aunt Sarah along with Brianna. I'm at a healthy weight, though I still see a nutritionist regularly. Some days are harder than others. Sometimes I still feel guilty for eating a full meal, still hear my mother's voice saying I don't deserve it. But I'm learning that food is fuel, not a reward, that hunger is a signal, not a punishment, that I deserve to take up space in the world, to nourish my body, to exist without earning the right to eat. Brianna and I cook together now. She's teaching me recipes she learned from our parents while I was locked out of the kitchen. We don't lock any doors in Aunt Sarah's house. The pantry is always open. There's always fruit on the counter. Remember when Mom said hunger builds character? Brianna asked one day while we made pasta. Yeah, I said, adding extra cheese to my bowl just because I could. I think she was wrong, Brianna said. Surviving her built character. The hunger just built trauma. She was right. I survived systematic starvation disguised as discipline. I lived through severe neglect disguised as parenting. And now every meal I eat is a small act of rebellion against the people who tried to erase me one locked kitchen at a time. The nutritionist was right, too. It was dangerous neglect. They just used hunger as their weapon instead of something more obvious. But the body keeps score, and mine told the truth when I finally allowed it to speak. They tried to starve me into silence. I eat now, 3 meals a day, snacks when I'm hungry. It's revolutionary, it's recovery, it's resistance, and it's mine. Before you go, here's a quick bonus for sticking around. If you love learning and growing like I do, you need to try audiobooks. I've got an exclusive deal with Audible. Your first month is completely free. That's access to over 500,000 titles, zero cost to you. All the details are waiting in the description. Don't miss this one.